Hello there, it's Andy Parks from the Washington Times, and I'll be joined momentarily by Stephen Dinan, Washington Times Assistant Managing Editor. But first, as a listener to my podcast, you qualify to receive a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times. Simply go to washingtontimes.com/Andy. That's washingtontimes.com/ANDY. All right, as promised, Stephen Dinan, Washington Times Assistant Managing Editor. Hello, Stephen.
Hello, Andy.
IRS blames pandemic and Congress for failure to process taxpayer returns. So this explains what happened to my refund, right?
It's there are tens of millions of people in that exact situation right now who apparently the IRS sitting on 24 million filings from last year that they haven't processed yet. Some of those are refunds, some of those are payments that people made. The IRS was getting ready to send out collection notices and levies to people saying, hey, you owe us, and then they realized, well, actually, wait. Maybe they already paid us, or maybe there's an abatement request sitting there that we need to deal with. What happened? The commissioner, Commissioner Rettig, wrote basically an open letter, an op-ed yesterday, saying, "Hey, if you're waiting on refunds, if you're trying to call us right now and not getting through in this tax season, well, first of all, not everybody's back to work because of the pandemic, but Congress isn't giving us enough money to go collect money, so blame Congress." And it was a really stark and I guess I would say combative statement. He went so far as to say, hey, if you're worried about the ultra wealthy tax chief getting away with it, blame Congress. They haven't given us enough money to go after the ultra wealthy tax chiefs. This is an agency that has had a really, really, really bad last decade or so. From the Tea Party targeting scandal to, we reported earlier this month their attempt to use facial recognition software for taxpayers who wanted to get their IRS records online. They had to retreat from that. They had a breach, a massive security breach of people being able to get their transcripts a few years back. This agency's customer service, they said that last year they were able to answer only about 30 million calls out of more than 100. I think it was more than 200 million calls that they got. They were barely able to answer the phones on the calls they got. It's a struggling agency, that's for sure. Whether the problem is the IRS's management, or whether it's the pandemic, or whether it's Congress, obviously.
Yeah. In your column, you talk about lost millions of dollars because they wouldn't fix a $600,000 letter opening machine. Seriously? I mean, that sounds like a management problem.
They were incredulous at what the IRS was, their explanation. This is out at the Kansas City Service Center, where it's a machine that opens mail automatically, and it's supposed to be able to spot which payments, which letters have checks in them, and then so you can go and deposit those checks. Turns out the machine is so old, it's decades old, and it keeps breaking down. It got so bad that the IRS just turned off the check spotting part of the machine. And so now they have to do all of that manually. It gets backed up. It takes a lot more time. Just what goes on, since they can't deposit the checks as quickly as they used to, they're missing out on interest payments. Gives you a sense for how much money is coming through the IRS. That a couple of days or weeks worth of delay in that is worth $100 million a year to the IRS. It's actually $10 million a month is what they were averaging in terms of lost interest payments, because they weren't opening the mail on time, because they had a broken machine. As you said, $600,000 to buy a new machine, less than $400,000 to go and pay for a full refurbishment. And the IRS was like, nah, we think there are other things going on.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm dumbfounded by it. I don't know what else they can do to make themselves look worse.
That's exactly right. Well, they can write a letter saying it's Congress's fault we don't have enough money. That's something else they could do to make themselves look worse, which is what they just did.
So it's quite possible for someone like me to be waiting another year to get my tax refund, and then I'm getting ready to file a new one.
That's exactly right. There are absolutely taxpayers out there who are probably in the middle of compiling their information and maybe filling out their forms right now, who still don't know whether the IRS actually received, say their payments, if they made quarterly payments last year, if they what happened to their returns, and then obviously all sorts of things depend on that. So 24 million. This is 24 million pieces of filings from the last tax year still undealt with, according to information that the Washington Post says was provided to Congress.
All right, before I let you go, what are you working on?
It's actually a story on a court challenge over Homeland Security's deportation rules. You and I have talked about these before. These are the rules that basically limit who deportation officers are allowed to arrest or try and actually remove to deport from the country. They're finally Secretary's rules, which he issued in late September, finally going before several federal courts, and we're starting to see the outlines of the argument. The administration says, well, more aggravated felons are being arrested this year, 2021, than were in the previous year. So we think that the rules are actually doing a good job. The states that are challenging it say, well, first of all, you're comparing last year's numbers to the height of the pandemic, when ICE officers weren't really out doing jobs, weren't really out on the streets, and there weren't illegal immigrants crossing the streets, crossing the border. There are all sorts of reasons why those numbers may look different compared to 2020. Beyond that, though, they make the point that when you look at deportation numbers across every category, from murders to aggravated assaults to drunk driving, all of it, deportations are actually down. So even if ICE says they're arresting more people, they're not kicking them out of the country. And so that's what the judges are going to have to decide, is whether the government has the flexibility, the administration has the flexibility to free people, despite the law suggesting that that Congress wanted these people detained and deported. We'll see what the judges do, but we're starting to get the argument on it.
You can read all of Stephen Dinan's stories at WashingtonTimes.com. As always, thank you, Stephen.
My pleasure, Andy.
Washington Times Assistant Managing Editor, Stephen Dinan. Thanks for joining me today, and remember to receive a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times. Go to WashingtonTimes.com/Andy. You'll get 24/7 digital access to the Washington Times at 50% off. Again, go to WashingtonTimes.com/ANDY. I'm Andy Parks. Have a great day.